My dear, Sushi here, and I'm going to tell you a beautiful romantasy today. Close your eyes, or maybe enjoy the beautiful tarot card style images. Breathe slowly and let the forest find you. There is a forest at the edge of a valley called the Elder Hollow. No road leads directly to it. The maps that exist of it are old and slightly wrong, as if the cartographers who attempted it lost their nerve somewhere near the middle and began to guess. The trees there are older than the town nearby, older than the stone church at the town center, older than the name of the river that runs along the valley's eastern edge. Locals do not walk in it after dark. They could not tell you precisely why. It is simply one of those things that is known without being spoken. On a quiet morning in early autumn, a man named Rowan Vale arrived at the edge with a leather bag, a compass, and a contract. He was a land surveyor. He measured things for living, distances, elevations, boundaries, the clean mathematical fact of where one thing ended and the other began. He was good at his work. He was not a cruel man. He simply belonged, as most people do, to a system so large and so normal that cruelty happened inside it without requiring cruel people to carry it out. The contract was from a timber company. The forest was scheduled for clearing. Rowan's job was to walk it, stake it, and hand back a report with numbers in it. He had done this 14 times before in 14 other places. He expected to be finished by Thursday. He's not finished by Thursday. He was not finished for a very long time. The first strange thing was the compass. Rowan had owned it for 11 years. It had never misbehaved. It was a good compass, Swiss made, reliable in the way that good tools are reliable, quietly, without ceremony. But inside Elder Forest, past the second ridge, it began to drift. Not dramatically, just a degree or two, then 5. Then settling somewhere that was not quite north and not quite anything else. He recalibrated it. It drifted again. He told to himself it was mineral deposits in the soil. That was a reasonable explanation. He preferred reasonable explanations. He had built a career and a reasonably comfortable life on them. The second strange thing was the silence. Not the ordinary silence of an empty wood, which is actually quite full of small sounds. Wind, birds, the creak of branches negotiating with each other. This silence was different. It was the silence of a room when someone in it is paying very close attention to you. Watchful, patient, and old. He was 3 miles in before he found the clearing. It was ringed by ash trees, so enormous their roots had broken through the surface of the soil and arched overhead in places, like the ribs of something vast and resting. The light came through the canopy in long, slow columns. The air tasted of rain that had fallen several days ago, and moss that had been growing for several decades, and something else entirely that he could not name, and that made the back of his neck prickle pleasantly, the way it does when something beautiful is about to happen. He set down his backpack. He did not notice, but he reached for his stakes. Those, said a voice from the tree line, would be a mistake. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, in the way that certain people stand in places they have always belonged, without effort, without announcement, as if the space had simply arranged itself around her. Her name, he would later learn, was Sarah. She was tall. Her skin had the warm, deep tone of wood that has aged in good conditions. Hardwood, the interior of something that has survived many winters. Her hair fell past her shoulders in dark waves threaded with what appeared to be, and in fact were, small pale flowers of the kind that grow only in very old forest on the north faces of very old trees. Her eyes were amber, not metaphorically amber, precisely, literally the color and depth of tree resin, warm and transparent and ancient, with the quality of suspension to them. And if things that entered them might be held there indefinitely, she looked at Rowan the way you might look at a fire that has started in a place where you cannot afford a fire, not with hatred, with the measured, unsurprised resignation of someone who has seen the particular problem many times and is very tired of it. "You are going to survey this forest," she said. "That's..." "Yes, and that's the job," he said. "And after the survey, the company will assess the report and they will cut it down," she said. "You may say so plainly. I have been listening to this language of plainly for 300 years. The decorative versions do not interest me." Rowan opened his mouth and closed it. He had to concede, correct. "I'm sorry," he said. He was not entirely sure what he was apologizing for. It felt like the right direction. She studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in the amber eyes. Not softening exactly, more like a recalibration of an assessment. "Sit down," she said at last. "There is something you need to understand before you touch another tree in this place." He sat. The root he sat on was the precise shape of something comfortable, which he suspected was not accidental. She told him about the debt. The debt was old, older than the timber company, older than the concept of timber companies. It had been laid into the soil of elder forest in a time before the valley had its name, and when the forest itself was the only thing that existed here worth naming. The terms were simple. Any person who entered elder forest with the intent to destroy it, who put their mark upon it, who began the sentence of its ending, became bound to it. Their breath to its breath, their life to its life. When the last three fell, they fell with it. That seems disproportionate? She tilted her head. You are going to have 3 years, and I have 300 years of trees destroyed. The forest sensation of proportion differs from yours. No, I was going to say harsh. Yes. She placed her hand against his chest, open palm, very still, and he felt something move through him that had no name in any language he spoke. Not plainly, not gentle, something in between, vast and deliberate, like a door closing in a room you did not know you were standing in. The trees around the clearing sighed. He was not imagining it. Now, Sarah said, stepping back, you understand the situation. We have left. We know you should have left too. But he's dead. He stayed. Later he would imagine and examine the decision from every angle and arrive always at the same conclusion. That he stayed because something in the clearing was the most real thing he had encountered in a very long time. And he was deeply, quietly tired of things that aren't. He felt a connection building up in his heart, in his chest. The weeks that followed had a rhythm unlike any Rowan had. He told the timber company there were complications, legal ambiguities, boundary disputes requiring investigation. He was precise enough about this to be believed and vague enough to buy time, which is a skill surveyors develop early. He drove back to the valley early morning, and every morning he walked into elder forest. He sat in the clearing with Sarah, and he learned. She taught him things that made and had no place in any professional training he had received. She showed him the language of roots, the slow, continuous conversation happening beneath the soil, tree to tree, a network so vast and so patient that what passed between its outermost members had taken 40 years to travel. She showed him the way the oldest trees oriented themselves very slightly over the decades toward each other, a millimeter a year, barely measurable, a long and unhurried turning towards companionship. She showed him a tree at the clearing's northern edge that bore 3 meters up its trunk, a scar that had been healing since before the town in the valley had been founded, before anyone now alive had been born. Does it still hurt? He asked, meaning the tree. She considered this seriously. It has made a different thing of the heart, she said. It is what trees do. They do not heal as much as incorporate. He thought about that for the rest of the day. He thought about it for several days after. Meanwhile, at the forest's edge, the work crews continued. They had not stopped, only retreated to the perimeter while the legal question was pending. He could hear them sometimes on the wind, and when he looked at Sarah, he could see what the sound caused her. A slight dimming, like a lamp when the power wavers, there and then gone, but there. He filed 4 counter reports with the company. He contacted the legal land registry office in the nearest city and spent 2 days in their archive, which smelled of old paper and institutional patience, looking for anything useful. He found it on the second afternoon. A surveying error from 1889, a boundary line drawn 300 meters east of where it should legally have been, never corrected, meaning that a significant portion of the proposed clearance fell on land the company did not, in fact, own. He was not an emotional man as a rule. He sat in the archive and felt something move through his chest. That was not entirely unlike what he had felt when Sarah placed her hand there. He filed the discrepancy. He engaged a conservation lawyer who came recommended and was worth every penny. He wrote reports in the careful, bloodless language of legal challenge, which is slow and unglamorous and occasionally effective, which is all you can ask for of an instrument. He did not sleep well. He survived on cold coffee and the unfamiliar clarifying sensation of doing work that mattered in a direction he could actually believe in. Sarah did not thank him. She watched him with amber eyes and said, one evening as the light went long and golden through the canopy, "You're spending yourself on it." He replied, "No, you are spending yourself on it," and nodded toward the dimness of her edges, the places where she was slightly less than she had been. She looked at him, not the assessing look, not the watchful look, something quieter and more dangerous than either. "No one has said that to me before," she said. "That you are fading? That they noticed?" The clearing was very quiet. The old ash trees as its center made a sound that was not quite a sound. Autumn moved toward winter, and Rowan learned the thing she had not told him. He learned it in pieces, the way you learn difficult things, sideways, in fragments, until one day the whole shape of it simply there, undeniable, and required to be looked at directly. If the forest died, she was free. 300 years she had been bound to elder forest, bound to its breath, its seasons, its slow and ancient conversations with itself. She had watched the valley below fill with roads and houses, and the particular kind of noise that civilization makes when it is not listening to anything older than itself. She had watched the forest edge retreat, decade by decade, the way the tide retreats on an unlucky shore. She had stood her ground in the only way available to her, which was to simply remain, and the remaining had cost her things she did not speak of, in a currency she had no name for. The binding that tied her to the forest, that had these past weeks also tied her to Rowan, would break when the last tree fell. She would become whatever she had been before, free, formless, unanchored, the world's and no particular places. He understood. When he understood this, why she had never fought the threat to the forest with her full strength, why she had watched and waited and tested and allowed, why 300 years of captivity, however beautiful the cage, produces a particular quality of longing that does not announce itself but is present in every silence. He sat with this knowledge for a long time. Then he went back and filed another report. The injection arrived on a grey Friday in the late November. 360 acres of elder forest protected, clearings suspended, pending full legal review. The war crew stood down. Rowan walked to the clearing. The trees were bare now, their branches making their winter architecture against a sky the color of old pewter, and the clearing was still and very cold, and Sarah was there. She was less than she had been, in that way that was not about body, but present. Fully, precisely, quietly present, the way important things are present before something is decided. "It is done," she said. "For now," he said. "These things take years, but the ground is held." She nodded. She looked at the trees. The amber eyes moved over them with something in them that was old and complicated, and not entirely happiness. "Sarah," he said. She looked at him. "I did not ask you something. I should have asked it at the beginning, and I didn't." She waited. "Sarah, what do you want?" The clearing breathed. She was quiet for a long time, long enough that the light shifted, long enough that a single dead leaf fell from the nearest ash tree and settled on the frozen ground between them. "I have wanted to be free," she said at last. "No longer than you have had a word for wanting. The wanting is the oldest thing in me, older than the binding, maybe older than the forest itself." She paused. "And I find, which surprises me more than I can say, that it is no longer the only thing." She did not say his name. She did not need to. The forest knew. The forest had been paying attention to everything all along, the way forests do, slowly, completely, without missing anything. He came back in April. The case was proceeding. It would take years. He had left the survey firm in January, quietly, without drama, and set up a small practice advising on conservation boundaries and heritage land assessments. The work paid less. He slept better. He was becoming, slowly and with some difficulty, someone he recognized. The forest in April was a different place. New green everywhere, insistent, almost aggressive, as if the trees were making a point. The light through the fresh canopy was the specific gold green of early spring. The color of the world goes briefly before summer arrives and deepens everything. Sarah was in the clearing. She was entirely herself again. The edges sharp, the amber eyes, warm and bottomless, the pale flowers back in her dark hair. The oldest ash tree at the clearing center had put out new growth at a rate that seemed by any reasonable measure unlikely. Several of its branches had oriented themselves very slightly toward the place where Rowan stood. "You came back," she said. "I did. But the death still holds. I know. The breath with this forest, when it falls, you fall. Yes." She looked at him steadily. The amber eyes were doing that thing where they held more than they showed, which he had come to understand was simply how she looked at things she was deciding to keep. "That doesn't frighten you," she said. "What frightens me is the version of this where I turn around," he said quietly. The ashtrays moved very gently in no wind at all. She took one step forward, out of the tree line into the clearing's open light. A step she had not taken, he realized, not once in all the weeks he had come here. She had always stood at the edge. She had always kept the option of the shadow. She was standing in the light now. He met her in the middle. The debt was not lifted. Love is not a legal instrument. Rowan's life remained threaded to the life of Elder Forest. He walked its boundary every morning, every week, for years. He knew every tree on it eventually, the way you know a face you have returned to, because returning is the only thing that makes sense. And Sarah remained bounded. The roots held, the seasons turned, forest awake. But the binding that had been a captivity became slowly something that was also a home. Not because the cage has changed, cages do not change, but because the meaning of staying shifted from cannot leave to will not, from trapped to rooted, from alone to not. There is a difference. Anyone who has loved something difficult and chosen to stay know there is a difference. And somewhere in Elder Hollow, in a clearing ringed by ancient ash trees that lean very slowly together each other and toward her and toward him, the oldest things were still breathing together. "My love, it's time to sleep and get some rest. The forest is still standing, and the dead becomes a home. Good night, sweet dreams."